ever feel like the world's changing crazy fast
Mm-hmm.
and you're like just trying to keep up? I mean, we're drowning in new tech all the time, but is it actually, is it making life better for everyone?
That's the question, isn't it?
That is the question, and it's exactly what we're diving into today in this deep dive.
Right.
We're going to be looking at this excerpt from The Second Machine Age by Erik Brynjolfsson and Andrew Mcafee.
Yeah.
And I know what you're thinking, like, oh, great, another book about technology.
Another one.
Right, but trust me on this one, okay? This one's got some really eye-opening ideas about how tech is changing, not just our gadgets, right, but like our entire society.
I think that's a great way to put it. And what's so fascinating about this excerpt in particular is this paradox it highlights.
Okay, paradox.
Yeah. So on the one hand, we're seeing these mind-blowing innovations every day, it seems like, and the economy, at least on paper, seems to be booming, right?
Right.
But at the same time, so many people feel like they're being left behind.
Yeah, it's like everyone's talking about, self-driving cars and AI, but meanwhile, you're just struggling to, pay your rent.
Exactly.
Keep the lights on.
Yeah. And the authors actually point this out pretty starkly. They say, since the year 2000, the number of billionaires on the Forbes list has quintupled.
Quintupled.
But guess what? Median household income has actually fallen.
So, like, where's all that wealth going?
That's the big question. And that's where I think the author's concepts of bounty and spread come in.
Bounty and spread.
Yeah, so think of bounty as all the amazing stuff technology brings us, right? Cheaper products, life-saving medical treatments, instant communication with anyone, anywhere in the world.
Right.
So it's undeniable that tech has created this bounty of opportunities.
Okay.
But the problem is that bounty is not being shared evenly.
Right.
And that's what spread refers to. It's that growing gap between the super rich and everyone else.
So it's like we're baking this giant, delicious, tech cake, but only a few people are getting these huge slices, and everyone else is just fighting over crumbs.
That's a great analogy. I like that a lot.
Thanks.
And some people would argue that even those crumbs are better than nothing, that even the poorest people today benefit from things like smartphones and the internet.
I mean, I could see that argument, right?
Sure, and they have a point, but the authors counter that by saying this rising tide lifts all boats argument doesn't really hold water when you actually look at the numbers.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, in America, for example, the median worker today actually earns less than they did back in 1999.
Wow.
Housing costs are through the roof, healthcare is getting more and more expensive, and a huge chunk of the population is living paycheck to paycheck.
So is the American dream, like that idea of working hard and moving up in the world, is that fading away?
Well, the data seems to suggest that, yeah, I mean, you're actually more likely to climb the economic ladder in places like Denmark or even Italy than in the U.S. these days.
That's kind of wild to think about.
It is. And what's really worrying is this isn't just about material wealth, right? The spread also affects access to things like quality education, healthcare, and even just opportunities for personal growth.
Okay, so we've got this growing gap between the haves and have-nots. But isn't that just, part of how capitalism works?
That's a big question, and it leads us to another really important topic, and that's technological unemployment.
Okay, so you're talking about robots stealing all of our jobs.
Well, yeah. I mean, remember those old sci-fi movies where robots take over everyone's jobs?
Sure.
Well, this fear, it's not just a Hollywood fantasy.
Right.
It's actually been around for centuries.
Yeah, I remember learning about the Luddites smashing those textile machines back in the 1800s.
Exactly.
They weren't exactly thrilled about the new technology.
Not at all. And it wasn't just them, even brilliant economists like John Maynard Keynes. They worried about technology permanently pushing people out of work.
So are the robots really going to steal all of our jobs? I mean, what do economists say about that today?
Well, there are two main camps. The majority of economists believe that technology in the long run creates more jobs than it destroys. Think about it like this, as technology makes things cheaper, right? Like the smartphones we were talking about earlier.
Right.
People have more money to spend on other things, and that fuels new businesses and creates new jobs.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like when food prices go down, you have more money to spend on like entertainment or travel or whatever.
Yeah.
So that creates jobs in those industries.
Exactly. And that's the basic argument, but there's another view that's a bit more pessimistic.
Okay.
And some economists argue that the sheer speed and scale of technological change today is different.
Okay.
What if the new jobs that are created require skills that most people don't have?
Right.
Or what if wages can't keep up with the cost of living?
Yeah.
That's a recipe for what economists call structural unemployment, where a big chunk of the population is simply left out of the workforce.
And that's where this whole second machine age thing gets really interesting, right?
Yeah, you got it. And to illustrate this point, the authors use a thought experiment.
Ooh, a thought experiment. I like those.
Yeah, so imagine a world where androids can do every job a human can do, but they can do it for a fraction of the cost.
So we're talking like a Blade Runner situation here.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, so what happens in this android scenario?
Well, things get pretty dystopian.
Okay.
The owners of the androids, they obviously rake in massive profits,
Right.
but most people are left unemployed, struggling to make ends meet.
Yeah, not great.
No, and it's a stark reminder that there's no guarantee that technological progress automatically leads to prosperity for everyone.
So it's not just about, celebrating new gadgets. It's about making sure those advancements actually benefit society as a whole.
Exactly.
But hold on, what about globalization? Isn't that a big factor in job losses too?
That's a great point. It's tempting to blame everything on the robots, but the reality is more complex. Globalization has definitely played a role in shifting jobs to countries with lower wages.
And we've seen a ton of manufacturing jobs disappear in, developed countries like the U.S. So is that all because of globalization, or is there more to the story?
Well, the authors make a pretty compelling argument that automation, not just offshoring, is a major culprit.
Okay.
Even in countries like China, where labor is relatively cheap, factories are increasingly relying on robots.
Really?
In fact, Terry Gou, the founder of Foxconn, the company that makes iPhones,
Yeah.
he replaced hundreds of thousands of human workers with robots.
Wow. So even with lower wages, automation is still winning out.
It seems that way, yeah.
So this is a global trend we're looking at, not just something happening in the U.S. or Europe.
Exactly, and it's not just factory jobs either. Think about things like call centers or data entry.
Right.
Jobs that were once outsourced are now being automated away.
So where does that leave us? Are we looking at, humans versus machines in the future?
Well, that's where things get really thought-provoking.
Okay.
The authors argue that it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Instead of simply replacing humans,
Yeah.
machines can be designed to complement our skills and enhance our capabilities.
So it's not about, fighting the robots. It's about figuring out how to work with them.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where humans and machines collaborate to achieve things that neither could do alone.
This is getting me thinking, if we can harness the power of technology the right way, maybe this second machine age doesn't have to be so scary after all.
That's the hope.
But how do we actually make that happen?
That's a great question, and that's what we're going to dive into in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back to explore how we can shape a future where technology works for everyone, not just a select few. So before the break, we were talking about this idea of humans and machines like teaming up, not just competing.
Right.
It sounds kind of like, a superhero movie or something, but it's happening like all around us.
It is, yeah, and I think the key here is how we approach the design and implementation of these technologies.
No.
Like, why just automate tasks when we can create tools that actually amplify human potential? Machines are incredible at processing massive amounts of data, crunching numbers, handling those really repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
But humans, we excel at things like creativity, critical thinking, those really complex decisions that require, emotional intelligence.
So let the robots do the heavy lifting, and we can focus on being, human.
Exactly.
But what does that actually look like in the real world?
Well, imagine you're a doctor.
Okay.
You're good at what you do, but your only human right learns.
Right.
You can't possibly keep up with every new medical study or analyze thousands of scans without potentially missing something.
Right.
Now, imagine having an AI assistant that can do all that for you.
Okay.
It can flag potential issues, compare your patient's data with millions of others, suggest treatment options based on the latest research.
Wow.
But you're still the doctor, you're making the final call, you've just got this super-powered sidekick helping you provide the best possible care.
That's a game changer. And it's not just healthcare, is it? This idea could revolutionize pretty much any field.
Absolutely. Think about architects using AI to design more sustainable buildings, or teachers using virtual reality to create these really immersive learning experiences for their students.
Wow.
It's about using technology to do what it does best, so humans can focus on what we do best.
Okay. This is all starting to sound pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic. A lot of people are worried about losing their jobs to automation.
Right.
How do we make sure everyone benefits from this technological shift not just, a select few?
That is the million-dollar question, and I think a big part of the answer lies in reskilling and upskilling the workforce.
Okay.
We need to make sure people have the training and education they need to thrive in this new landscape.
So it's not just about learning to code, right?
Right.
What kind of skills are we talking about?
Well, think about those uniquely human skills
Yeah.
that are difficult to automate.
Okay.
Critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, adaptability, communication. Those are the superpowers that will be in high demand in the second machine age.
So less about memorizing facts and figures and more about, learning how to think critically and solve problems in a constantly changing world.
Exactly. And this requires a real shift in how we approach education and training.
Okay.
We need to move away from that old school one-size-fits-all model
Right.
and embrace more personalized and flexible approaches that cater to individual needs and interests.
So instead of trying to force everyone into the same mold,
Yeah.
recognize that people learn in different ways and have different strengths and passions.
Exactly. And it's not just about formal education either.
Okay.
We need to create opportunities for continuous learning and development throughout people's careers.
So what does that look like?
Think online courses, apprenticeships, mentorships, even just encouraging people to explore new hobbies and interests.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of lifelong learning where people are constantly evolving and adapting to the changing demands of the job market.
So we're saying goodbye to the, job for life and embracing this idea of, life of learning. But that sounds like a lot of pressure. All this learning and adapting. How do we make sure people don't get overwhelmed and left behind in this fast-paced world?
Well, it's not just about individual effort. We also need systemic change.
Okay.
Companies need to step up and invest in their employees' development.
Right.
Governments need to create policies that support lifelong learning and provide safety nets for those who are displaced by automation.
So creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to learn and grow and adapt no matter their background or circumstances.
Exactly. And this brings us back to that central theme of inequality.
Okay.
It's not enough to just train people for new jobs. We also need to make sure those jobs pay a living wage and provide opportunities for advancement.
So creating a future where the bounty of the second machine age is shared more broadly, not just concentrated in the hands of a few.
That's the goal. And we need to think about things like, progressive taxation, universal basic income portable benefits that follow workers from job to job. Policies that ensure everyone benefits from the increased productivity and prosperity that technology can bring.
So it's like we're standing at a crossroads.
Yeah.
We can choose to go down this path where technology just makes inequality worse and, increases social division.
Right.
Or we can choose a path where technology actually empowers everyone to live, healthier, more fulfilling, more prosperous lives.
I like that.
But how do we make sure we choose the right path? Where do we even begin?
That's a great question, and it leads us perfectly into the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've talked about the challenges and opportunities of the second machine age.
Right.
Now let's explore some practical solutions and strategies for building a future where technology actually works for everyone.
Okay, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a moment to wrap up our exploration of the second machine age and discuss how we can all play a role in shaping a more equitable and hopeful future. Okay, so we're back and we're ready to tackle, I think, the big question, right? How do we make this second machine age work for everyone, not just, the lucky few?
Yeah, it's time to kind of move from, what if to what now.
Right.
And honestly, I think one of the biggest hurdles we face is just understanding what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
There's so much hype and jargon around AI and automation that it can feel just overwhelming, even intimidating.
It's like everyone's suddenly speaking a different language.
Yeah, right.
So how do we, decode this whole tech speak and make these conversations accessible to everyone, not just the, Silicon Valley crowd?
Well, I think education is key.
Okay.
We need to kind of demystify these technologies in schools, workplaces, community centers everywhere.
Right.
The more people understand how AI and automation actually work, the less scary they become, and the more we can all participate in shaping their development and use.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
But even if we understand the tech, there's still this issue of job displacement.
Right.
What happens to the truck driver when all the self-driving trucks hit the road? Or, the factory worker when the robots take over the assembly line?
That's a crucial point. Our social safety nets, things like unemployment insurance, they were designed for a different era.
Right.
We need to completely reimagine them for a world where jobs can vanish practically overnight.
So are we talking about a complete overhaul of the system? What could that look like?
Well, there are some pretty radical ideas out there, like universal basic income, which would provide everyone with a basic level of financial security regardless of their employment status.
Right.
Others argue for portable benefits that follow you from job to job, so you're not constantly starting from scratch when you switch careers.
Okay, so these are some big, bold ideas.
They are.
And it sounds like, we need big, bold solutions if we're going to navigate this second machine age successfully.
Yeah, I think so.
But, it can't just be all on the government, right? What role do businesses play in all of this?
Oh, huge. Absolutely. Businesses have a huge responsibility here. And I think it starts with investing in their employees, providing training and development opportunities so people can adapt to new roles and industries.
So instead of just replacing workers with robots,
Yeah.
companies should be upskilling those workers
Yeah.
to, operate and manage those
Yep,
robots.
exactly. And it goes beyond just, technical skills, too.
Wow.
It's about fostering creativity, problem solving, and those uniquely human qualities that machines, at least for now, can't replicate.
So it's like we're entering this new era of collaboration, not just between humans and machines, but between businesses, workers, policymakers. We all need to be on the same page working together to create a future that benefits everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I think ultimately it comes down to a question of values. What kind of society do we want to create?
Right.
Do we want a world where technology just magnifies inequality and concentrates power in the hands of, a small elite?
Yeah.
Or do we want a world where technology actually empowers everyone to live healthier, more fulfilling, and more prosperous lives?
Yeah. It's like we're standing at a fork in the road.
It
And the choices we make today are going to determine the course of the future.
That's a powerful image. And the good news is we have the power to choose.
Right.
This isn't some inevitable fate. It's a future that we create through our actions, our policies, our investments, and our values.
So what does this all mean for, our listeners out there? What can they do right now to kind of prepare for and participate in shaping this second machine age?
Well, I think first and foremost, embrace lifelong learning.
Okay.
The skills that are hot today might be obsolete tomorrow. So be curious, be adaptable, and never stop learning.
It's like that old saying, the only constant is change. But instead of fearing it, we need to embrace it as an opportunity for growth.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try new things. Step outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
The jobs of the future might not even exist yet, so just be open to the unexpected.
Be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Shape your own destiny instead of just letting the future happen to you.
Love it. And one last piece of advice, don't underestimate the power of human connection.
Oh, that's so important.
In a world that's increasingly dominated by technology, our ability to connect with each other, to empathize, to collaborate, and to build those meaningful relationships, it's going to be more valuable than ever.
It's a good reminder that technology should be a tool that enhances our humanity, not replaces it.
That's a perfect way to put it. So to wrap up our deep dive into the second machine age, remember, stay curious, stay adaptable, and never stop learning. The future is ours to create.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We hope this conversation has given you some food for thought and inspired you to think critically about the role of technology in your own life and in shaping the world around you.